Eugene Perry steps off the transport onto Kate's soil, immediately assaulted by the palpable desperation hanging in the air. The feline-like Cation female's intense mating season has thrown their world into chaos, and now it threatens to derail crucial peace negotiations with Earth. High-ranking Cation diplomat Zira rushes to greet the newly arrived human soldiers, her usual composure cracking under the strain of her own hormonal urges. Her eyes lock onto Eugene, pupils dilating visibly as she takes in his impressive physique. The decorated combat veteran stands tall, his face a mask of professional detachment despite the shocking scene unfolding around him. "Welcome to Kate, Sergeant Perry," Zira manages, her voice strained. "We appreciate your government's willingness to assist in this delicate matter." Eugene nods curtly, acutely aware of the crowds of agitated Cation females gathering beyond the compound's perimeter. Security forces struggle to hold them back as some of the more frenzied aliens attempt to breach the defenses, their desperate yowls echoing across the landscape. "My team and I are ready to serve, ma'am," Eugene responds, his training kicking in despite the bizarre circumstances. "We understand the gravity of the situation." Zira leads Eugene and his fellow soldiers deeper into the compound, briefing them on their unusual mission parameters. The sounds of desperation grow louder with each step, underscoring the urgency of their task. "As you can see, our females are overwhelmed," Zira explains, fighting to maintain her professional demeanor. "Your presence here is critical to maintaining intergalactic peace. Without your kind assistance, I fear our negotiations will collapse entirely." Eugene processes the information, his mind racing to adapt to this unprecedented scenario. He'd been trained for combat, for high-stakes missions that determined the fate of nations. But this, providing sexual relief to alien females to keep peace talks on track, it was beyond anything he'd ever imagined. As they reach the briefing room, Zira turns to Eugene, her composure finally slipping. "Sergeant Perry, I must insist on personally overseeing your preparation for the first diplomatic encounters." Eugene meets her gaze, recognizing the mix of need and determination in her eyes. He realizes that in this moment, he's no longer just a soldier. He's become a critical component in a delicate intergalactic ballet where the slightest misstep could have catastrophic consequences. Outside, the cries of the Cation females grow more frantic. The human soldiers exchange glances, each coming to terms with the weight of their new responsibility. They've been thrust into a situation that will test not only their physical prowess, but also their emotional fortitude. As Eugene prepares to face his first diplomatic encounter, he steels himself for the challenges ahead. The fate of two species now rests in his hands, and failure is not an option. The soldier in him is ready for the mission, but the man in him wonders if he's truly prepared for the intensity of alien desire about to be unleashed. Eugene follows Zira into the briefing room, his mind racing to process the bizarre situation. As the door closes behind them, shutting out the frantic cries of the Cation females, Zira activates a holographic display. "Sergeant Perry, we must accelerate your preparation," she says, her voice strained with urgency. "Our situation is far more precarious than initially believed." The display flickers to life, revealing detailed anatomical diagrams of Cation physiology. Eugene's eyes widen as he takes in the alien features, noting the striking differences and surprising similarities to human anatomy. "Pay close attention," Zira instructs, her tail twitching nervously. "Cation females have several unique pressure points and pheromone-sensitive areas. Gentle yet firm stimulation of these regions can help alleviate the intense hormonal urges of our mating season." As Zira explains, Eugene studies the diagrams intently, committing each detail to memory. He learns about the sensitive spots behind Cation ears, the calming effect of stroking their fur in specific patterns, and the importance of maintaining eye contact to establish trust. Suddenly, alarms blare throughout the compound. Zira's ears perk up, her body tensing. "Security breach," she hisses, rushing to a nearby console. Eugene's combat instincts kick in. "What's the situation?" he asks, already moving towards the door. "A group of females has breached the outer perimeter," Zira reports, her claws flying over the console. "Our security forces are overwhelmed. We need your assistance immediately." Without hesitation, Eugene sprints from the room, following the sounds of chaos. He emerges into a courtyard where Cation security guards struggle to contain a group of frenzied females who have forced their way inside. Eugene assesses the situation quickly, noting the guards' attempts to subdue the intruders without causing harm. He spots a young Cation female breaking away from the group, her eyes wild with desperation. As she lunges towards him, Eugene recalls his recent training. Time seems to slow as he sidesteps her attack, his hand moving with precision to a specific point on her neck. His fingers apply gentle pressure, and the effect is instantaneous. The female's aggressive stance melts away, her body relaxing as a contented purr escapes her throat. Eugene maintains the contact, his other hand moving to stroke her fur in the calming pattern he'd just learned. "It's okay," he says softly, meeting her gaze. "You're safe now. What's your name?" Mira, she responds, her voice trembling but calmer. From the corner of his eye, Eugene notices Zira observing the interaction, her expression a mix of relief and admiration. As the security team regains control of the situation, Zira approaches Eugene and Mira. "Impressive, Sergeant Perry," Zira says, her professional demeanor slipping to reveal a hint of the same desperation he'd seen in Mira's eyes. "Your quick thinking may have prevented a diplomatic incident." Eugene nods, still focused on keeping Mira calm. "She needs medical attention," he says, noticing the young Cation's exhaustion. As medics arrive to tend to Mira, Zira pulls Eugene aside. "Your effectiveness in this situation has made it clear that we must accelerate our timeline," she says, her voice low and urgent. "Follow me." Zira leads Eugene through a series of corridors, eventually stopping before an ornate door. "This chamber has been prepared for human-Cation interactions," she explains, keying in an access code. "It's designed to be comfortable and secure for both our species." The door slides open, revealing a softly lit room with plush furnishings and climate controls. Eugene steps inside, noting the careful attention to detail in the room's design. Zira follows, closing the door behind her. "Sergeant Perry," she begins, her composure visibly cracking. "As the highest-ranking diplomat present, it falls to me to initiate our first official interaction. This will set the standard for all future diplomatic encounters between our species." Eugene turns to face her, acutely aware of the changes in Zira's demeanor. Her fur stands on end, her tail swishing erratically. Her pupils dilate as she meets his gaze, a low rumble building in her chest. "I understand, ma'am," Eugene responds, his training kicking in despite the unusual circumstances. "How would you like to proceed?" Zira takes a step closer, her professional facade crumbling. "We must, that is to say, the importance of this interaction cannot be overstated. The future of our species' relations—" Her words trail off as she reaches out, her clawed hand hovering inches from Eugene's chest. The sexual tension in the room is palpable, charged with both political implications and primal need. Just as Zira's fingers make contact with Eugene's uniform, a sharp beep cuts through the air. Zira jerks back, her ears twitching towards the source of the sound. A communication panel near the door. "Ambassador Zira," a voice crackles through the speaker. "The High Council demands an immediate audience with the Earth representatives. Your presence, along with Sergeant Perry and his team, is required at once." Zira's frustration is evident as she responds, her voice strained. "Understood. We'll be there shortly." She turns back to Eugene, visibly struggling to regain her composure. "It seems our diplomatic engagement must be postponed, Sergeant. We're needed in the council chambers." Eugene nods, pushing aside his own conflicted feelings. "Of course, Ambassador. Duty comes first." As they hurry from the room to gather the other human soldiers, Eugene can't help but notice Zira's labored breathing and the tension in her movements. The stark contrast between her attempts at diplomacy and her barely contained physical needs is impossible to ignore. They make their way through the compound, the sounds of the agitated Cation females outside a constant reminder of the precarious situation. Eugene realizes that his role in this mission has become far more complex than he ever imagined. Every interaction, every decision now carries the weight of potentially reshaping the future of human-Cation relations. As they approach the High Council chambers, Eugene steels himself for the challenges ahead. The air crackles with tension, both political and sexual, as they prepare to face the leaders of Kate. Whatever happens in this meeting, Eugene knows that nothing will ever be the same. As Eugene and Zira approached the High Council chambers, the air grew thick with anticipation. The ornate doors swung open, revealing a grand room filled with stern-faced male Caitians. Eugene straightened his posture, acutely aware of the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. The council members' eyes locked onto the human soldiers, their tails twitching with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. Eugene noticed the subtle shifts in their body language as Zira entered the room, her pheromones visibly affecting the male Caitians. "Esteemed council," Zira began, her voice strained as she fought to maintain composure, "I present Sergeant Eugene Perry and his team from Earth, here to assist us during this challenging time." The head of the council, a grizzled Caitian with steel-gray fur, leaned forward. "We have reservations about this intervention," he growled. "The potential impact on our culture and mating practices is concerning." As the discussion progressed, Eugene observed the council members growing increasingly distracted. Their eyes darted nervously, and their tails swished with greater frequency. Recognizing an opportunity, Eugene stepped forward. "Honored council," he said, his voice steady and respectful, "perhaps a demonstration would alleviate your concerns." The council members exchanged glances before the leader nodded reluctantly. "Proceed, human." Eugene turned to Zira, who was visibly struggling to maintain her diplomatic facade. He approached her slowly, his movements deliberate and non-threatening. Recalling the briefing, Eugene gently placed his hands on Zira's shoulders, his fingers finding the precise pressure points he'd studied. The effect was immediate and striking. Zira's tense muscles began to relax under Eugene's touch. Her fur, which had been standing on end, smoothed out gradually. A low, contented purr rumbled from her chest, echoing through the chamber. The council members watched in amazement as Zira's professional demeanor returned. Her eyes, which had been clouded with primal need, cleared. She stood straighter, her voice steady as she addressed the council. "As you can see, gentlemen, the human intervention has merit," Zira said, her tone once again crisp and diplomatic. The council members murmured among themselves, their tails now swishing with intrigue rather than agitation. The leader raised a paw for silence. "Your demonstration is compelling," he admitted. "We will allow this intervention to continue, under strict guidelines and oversight." Before Eugene could respond, alarms blared throughout the complex. A young Caitian aide burst into the chamber, his fur on end. "High Council, we have a situation in the capital," he reported breathlessly. "Thousands of females are converging on the government complex. They've heard about the human's presence." The council leader turned to Eugene, his eyes narrow. "It seems your skills are needed sooner than anticipated, Sergeant. Can you and your team assist in calming this unrest?" Eugene nodded sharply. "Yes, sir. We'll need protective gear and coordination with your security forces." As Eugene and his team prepared to deploy, Dr. Miara, the lead Caitian scientist assigned to oversee the intervention, approached him with a data pad. "Sergeant, we'll be monitoring your interactions closely," she explained, her eyes gleaming with scientific curiosity. "The data we gather could be crucial in understanding and managing our mating season long-term." Eugene absorbed this information as he donned the specialized protective suit designed to shield him from the most aggressive advances. He led his team to the complex perimeter, where they could already hear the frenzied yowls of the approaching crowd. As they reached the outer security cordon, Eugene spotted a familiar face among the sea of agitated Caitians. Mira, the young female he'd encountered earlier, was at the forefront of a particularly volatile group. Eugene locked eyes with Mira, noting the wild desperation in her gaze. He approached slowly, his hands raised in a calming gesture. "Mira," he called out, his voice steady and soothing. "It's me, Eugene. Remember? You're safe. Let me help you." Mira's ears twitched at the sound of his voice. She took a hesitant step forward, her nostrils flaring as she caught his scent. Eugene reached out, allowing her to sniff his hand. With careful movements, Eugene applied gentle pressure to the key points on Mira's neck and shoulders. The tension in her body began to ebb away, replaced by a low, rhythmic purr. The effect rippled through the crowd as other Caitians observed Mira's transformation. Eugene's team followed his lead, working through the crowd with practiced efficiency. One by one, the frenzied Caitians began to calm, their aggressive postures melting into relaxed stances. As the situation stabilized, Dr. Miara approached Eugene, her eyes wide with excitement. "Sergeant, the scans we're getting from your interaction with Mira are fascinating," she said, gesturing to her datapad. "The calming effect seems to be lasting much longer than we anticipated. This could be a breakthrough." Eugene wiped sweat from his brow, the intensity of the past hour catching up with him. "What does this mean for the mission, Doctor?" Dr. Miara's tail swished thoughtfully. "I believe we need to expand our research. With your consent, we'd like to conduct a series of controlled encounters between you and Caitian volunteers. We could potentially develop a more sustainable solution to our mating season challenges." As Eugene processed this new development, his gaze drifted across the now calm crowd. His eyes met Zira's, and he felt a jolt of electricity run through him. The intensity of her stare reminded him of their interrupted private session, adding a layer of personal complexity to his already daunting task. Eugene took a deep breath, steeling himself for what lay ahead. He was no longer just a soldier on an unusual mission. He had become a key figure in a scientific study that could reshape Caitian society. The weight of this responsibility settled on his shoulders as he turned back to Dr. Miara. "I'm ready to do whatever is necessary, Doctor," he said, his voice firm with perseverance. "Where do we start?" "Begin?" Eugene asked, his voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. Dr. Miara's ears perked up, her tail swishing with excitement. "Follow me, Sergeant. We've prepared a specialized research facility within the complex." As they walked, Eugene noticed the gradual transformation of the government building. Corridors that once bustled with bureaucratic activity now housed advanced monitoring equipment and climate-controlled chambers. The air hummed with the quiet whir of machinery, a stark contrast to the chaos outside. "Here we are," Dr. Miara announced, gesturing to a sleek door. "This chamber has been outfitted with our most advanced sensors. We'll be able to track every physiological response in real time." Eugene stepped inside, taking in the room's clinical, yet comfortable design. A large padded examination table dominated the center, surrounded by an array of holographic displays and data terminals. "Your first session will be with Ambassador Zira," Dr. Miara explained, her tone professional but unable to hide a hint of curiosity. "We believe starting with a familiar subject will provide the most accurate baseline data." As if on cue, Zira entered the room. Her fur was slightly disheveled, and her eyes held a mixture of anticipation and hardly restrained need. She nodded to Eugene, a gesture that spoke volumes about their shared experience and the unfinished business between them. "I'll be observing from the adjacent room with my team," Dr. Miara said, moving towards the door. "Remember, Sergeant, we're looking for consistent application of the techniques you've developed. Try to maintain a clinical approach, as much as possible." As the door closed behind Dr. Miara, Eugene and Zira found themselves alone, the air thick with tension and unspoken desires. Eugene took a deep breath, centering himself. "Shall we begin, Ambassador?" he asked, gesturing to the examination table. Zira nodded, her voice husky as she replied, "Yes, let's proceed with our diplomatic engagement, Sergeant." Eugene approached Zira slowly, his hands steady as he reached for her shoulders. He found the pressure points he'd studied, applying gentle but firm pressure. The effect was immediate. Zira's tense muscles began to relax, her fur smoothing out as a low purr rumbled in her chest. "That's it," Eugene murmured, his fingers working methodically. "Just relax and let the tension flow out of you." As he continued the treatment, Eugene became acutely aware of Zira's closeness, her scent filling his nostrils. The pheromones she was releasing seemed more potent than ever, clouding his thoughts and making it difficult to maintain his clinical detachment. Zira's purring intensified, her body leaning into Eugene's touch, her tail wrapped around his leg, a clear sign of her growing arousal. Eugene's breath quickened, his own body responding to the intimate contact. "Eugene," Zira whispered, her use of his first name breaking through the last of his professional drive. We need..." Their lips met in a passionate kiss, years of diplomatic restraint crumbling in an instant. Eugene's hands moved from Zira's pressure points to caress her fur, eliciting a deep moan from the Cation ambassador. In the observation room, Dr. Miara and her team watched in fascination as the monitors displayed unprecedented data. Zira's vital signs stabilized, her hormonal levels balancing out in ways they had never seen before during mating season. Incredible, Dr. Miara breathed, her eyes darting between the passionate scene unfolding before her and the stream of data flowing across her screens. The human's touch is having a far more profound effect than we anticipated. As Eugene and Zira's encounter intensified, the monitors showed a significant and lasting reduction in Zira's mating urges. The implications were clear. More intimate contact between humans and Cations could provide a longer-term solution to the mating season's disruptive effects. When the session finally concluded, both Eugene and Zira were breathless, their bodies intertwined on the examination table. Dr. Miara entered the room, her excitement palpable. "Ambassador Sargent, the data we've collected is nothing short of revolutionary," she announced, her tail swishing with enthusiasm. "This could change everything." News of the successful session spread quickly through the complex. Within hours, Cation volunteers were lining up outside the research facility, eager to participate in the program. Eugene found himself thrust into a whirlwind of activity. The High Council, seeing the potential benefits, reluctantly agreed to expand the program. Eugene's team of human soldiers was divided into smaller groups to handle the increased demand, each soldier assigned specific Cation partners to maintain consistency in the data. As Eugene coordinated the expanded program, he couldn't help but feel a mix of pride and trepidation. The success of their mission was undeniable, but the implications of their actions were only beginning to unfold. His thoughts were interrupted by Dr. Miara's voice. "Sergeant, we have another session scheduled for you," she said, gesturing to a familiar face approaching them. Eugene's eyes widened as he recognized Mira, the young Cation female he had encountered during the unrest. She looked at him with a mixture of nervousness and hope, her tail twitching with anticipation. "Hello, Mira," Eugene said softly, offering a reassuring smile. "Are you ready to begin?" As Mira nodded, Eugene led her into the research chamber, acutely aware that each interaction, each session, was reshaping the future of human-Cation relations in ways he could never have imagined. The weight of responsibility settled on his shoulders once more as the door closed behind them, leaving Eugene to face the next challenge in this unprecedented interspecies collaboration. Intervention. As Eugene prepared for his session with Mira, a message from the Cation government arrived, delivered by an aide who burst into the room, slightly out of breath. "Sergeant Eugene," the aide said, handing over a datapad. "Urgent communication from the High Council." Eugene glanced at the screen, his eyebrows rising as he read the contents. He turned to Dr. Miara, who had been observing nearby. "It seems our mission parameters have just expanded significantly," he said, his voice a mix of surprise and grit. "The government is requesting our assistance with their upcoming annual festival." Dr. Miara's ears perked up with interest. "The Harvest Moon Festival? That's one of our most significant cultural events, and traditionally a time of intense mating activity." Eugene nodded, scanning through the details. "They want us to help maintain order and provide relief to Cation females throughout the 3-day celebration. This is a massive undertaking." The next few days were a whirlwind of activity as Eugene coordinated with Zira and Dr. Miara to develop strategies for managing the festival. They set up a command center within the government complex, surrounded by holographic displays showing the festival grounds and potential trouble spots. "We'll need to establish discrete relief stations throughout the area," Zira suggested, her tail swishing as she pointed to various locations on the map. "Places where our team can work without disrupting the festivities." Eugene agreed, his mind racing with logistical challenges. "We'll need to rotate our personnel to prevent exhaustion, and we'll need additional training on Cation customs to avoid any cultural missteps." As the festival approached, Eugene led his team through intensive preparation sessions. They practiced crowd control techniques adapted for Cation physiology and rehearsed de-escalation strategies for potential conflicts. The morning of the festival arrived, and Eugene stood at the entrance to the main grounds, taking in the vibrant decorations and the palpable excitement in the air. Cation music filled the atmosphere, a rhythmic blend of purrs and melodic yowls that sent shivers down his spine. As the crowds began to pour in, Eugene and his team sprang into action. They moved through the throngs of Cations, their trained eyes picking out individuals in distress. Eugene found himself working almost non-stop, applying his calming techniques to a constant stream of agitated females. By the second day, Eugene noticed changes in himself. His reflexes seemed sharper, his movements more fluid as he navigated the crowded festival. He could sense the subtle shifts in pheromone levels around him, allowing him to anticipate and prevent conflicts before they escalated. As he worked, a commotion near one of the relief stations caught his attention. A group of Cations, led by a familiar face, were shouting and waving signs. "Razor Claw," Eugene muttered, recognizing the leader of the conservative faction. He made his way towards the disturbance, his enhanced senses on high alert. "Humans out! Protect our culture!" Razor Claw's supporters chanted, attempting to block access to the relief station. Eugene moved with preternatural speed, placing himself between the protesters and a group of distressed Cation females seeking assistance. His voice, when he spoke, carried a new resonance that seemed to cut through the noise. "Your concerns are heard," he said, addressing Razorclaw directly. "But this is not the way to express them. These females need help. Let's discuss this peacefully, away from here." To Eugene's surprise, he found he could understand nuances in Razorclaw's growls and tail movements that had previously been lost on him. This new understanding allowed him to navigate the tense conversation with unexpected ease. As Eugene diffused the situation, he noticed camera drones hovering nearby, broadcasting the encounter across the festival grounds. He realized that this moment could significantly impact public opinion about the human presence on Kate. With the immediate crisis averted, Eugene turned his attention back to the relief station. He was surprised to see a familiar face among the volunteers. "Mira," he said, approaching the young Cation female. "What are you doing here?" Mira's ears twitched with a mix of nervousness and pride. "I wanted to help, Sergeant. After our sessions, I realized I could use what I've learned to assist others." Eugene nodded, impressed by her initiative. "Your presence here is invaluable, Mira. You can bridge the communication gap between us and the younger Cations." As the festival progressed, Eugene noticed that Mira's involvement seemed to have a calming effect on other young Cations, reducing the workload on his team. He made a mental note to discuss this development with Dr. Miara when time allowed. The final day of the festival brought with it a new set of challenges. Eugene received an urgent message from Dr. Miara, requesting his presence at the research facility. As he made his way through the crowds, he couldn't shake the feeling that a significant discovery awaited him. Entering the facility, Eugene found Dr. Miara surrounded by holographic displays filled with data. Her tail was twitching with barely held back excitement. "Sergeant," she said, her eyes gleaming, "we've made a breakthrough. The data from the festival shows that repeated interactions between humans and Cations are leading to lasting physiological changes in our females. Some are displaying reduced mating urges, even without direct human intervention." Eugene absorbed this information, his mind racing with the implications. "What does this mean for the future of our mission?" he asked. Before Dr. Miara could respond, alarms blared throughout the facility. A security officer burst into the room, his fur standing on end. "We have a situation at the main relief station," he reported breathlessly. "Razorclaw's supporters are attempting to sabotage the equipment. They're endangering both humans and Cations." Eugene's enhanced senses kicked into high gear as he processed this new threat. He turned to Dr. Miara, his voice filled with urgency. "We need to act fast. Contact Zira and have her meet me at the station. And see if Mira can gather a group of supportive Cations. We're going to need all the help we can get." As Eugene raced towards the developing crisis, he knew that the next few hours would be crucial. The future of human-Cation relations hung in the balance, and he was determined to ensure that all they had worked for wouldn't be undone by a single act of sabotage. Sabotage. As Eugene sprinted towards the main relief station, his enhanced senses picked up the chaos before he could see it. The air was thick with a mixture of pheromones, fear, and anger. Rounding the corner, Eugene took in the scene. Razor Claw's supporters had formed a barrier around the station. Their fur filled as they faced off against a group of distressed Caitians seeking help. In the center, Razor Claw himself stood atop an overturned medical cart, his voice a low growl as he addressed his followers. Eugene's newly heightened awareness allowed him to process the situation in a matter of seconds. He spotted Zira and Mira approaching from the opposite direction, accompanied by a group of young Caitians. Their timing couldn't have been better. "Zira, take the left flank. Mira, keep your group back for now," Eugene communicated, surprised to find his voice taking on a purring quality that the Caitians responded to instinctively. As Eugene stepped forward, Razor Claw's eyes locked onto him. "This ends now, human," the Caitian leader snarled. "Your interference in our ways has gone too far." Eugene raised his hands in a placating gesture, his movements fluid and purposeful. "Razor Claw, think about what you're doing. You're putting your own people at risk." As he spoke, Eugene felt a strange sensation building within him. His vocal cords seemed to vibrate in a new way, producing sounds that mirrored Caitian speech patterns. The protesters nearest to him tilted their heads, their ears twitching in confusion and curiosity. Seizing the moment of uncertainty, Zira stepped forward. "Listen to him, Razor Claw. The humans aren't here to change us, but to help us. Look around you. See how many of our people are suffering." Razor Claw's tail lashed back and forth as he surveyed the scene. Eugene could sense the conflict within the Caitian leader, his willpower wavering in the face of the evident distress around him. Suddenly, a young female Caitian broke from the crowd, stumbling towards the relief station. One of Razor Claw's supporters moved to intercept her, but Eugene was faster. In a blur of motion that surprised even himself, he placed himself between the two Caitians. "Enough," Eugene said, his voice carrying a resonance that seemed to vibrate through the air. "This isn't about politics or culture. It's about helping those in need." The female Caitian looked up at Eugene, her eyes wide with a mixture of pain and hope. Without hesitation, he began applying the calming techniques he had perfected over the past weeks. To his amazement, he found he could produce a low, soothing purr that seemed to amplify the effect of his touch. As the crowd watched, the female's distress visibly subsided, her breathing steadied, and the tension in her muscles eased. Mira stepped forward, gently guiding the now calm Caitian towards the relief station. The effect on the protesters was immediate. Murmurs of astonishment rippled through their ranks, and Eugene could sense their tenacity crumbling. Razor Claw, sensing the shift in mood, leaped down from his perch. This is unnatural," he growled, but there was uncertainty in his voice. "No, Razor Claw," Zira countered. "This is evolution, our two species working together, learning from each other. Isn't that the very essence of progress?" As if to underscore her words, more Caitians began to approach the relief station. Eugene and his team, including the volunteers led by Mira, sprang into action. They worked with practiced efficiency, their movements now a seamless blend of human technique and Caitian grace. Razor Claw watched, his tail twitching with agitation. But as the number of calmed and relieved Caitians grew, Eugene could see the fight draining out of him. "This isn't over," Razor Claw growled, but the threat in his voice had diminished. With a flick of his tail, he signaled his supporters to stand down. As the crisis defused, Eugene found himself at the center of a whirlwind of activity. Caitians of all ages approached him, some seeking help, others simply curious about the human who could purr. Through it all, Eugene felt a strange sense of exhilaration mixed with unease. The changes he was experiencing were profound, and he couldn't help but wonder where they might lead. Hours later, as the festival wound down and the last of the affected Caitians were treated, Eugene received an urgent summons from Dr. Miara. Leaving Zira and Mira to oversee the final operations at the relief station, he made his way to the research facility. Dr. Miara's lab was a hive of activity, with researchers poring over data displays and analyzing samples. The doctor herself was hunched over a console, her tail swishing in excitement as she processed the incoming data. "Sergeant," she greeted him, her eyes bright. "The results from the festival are beyond our wildest expectations, but that's not why I called you here." She pulled up a holographic display of Eugene's bioscan. "Your latest readings are, Well, unprecedented. The changes we've observed in you are accelerating at an exponential rate. Eugene stared at the swirling data, trying to make sense of the complex diagrams. What does this mean, Doctor? Before Dr. Miara could answer, a priority alert flashed across her screens. Her ears perked up as she read the incoming message, her expression growing serious. It seems we have a new challenge, she said, turning to Eugene. The High Council has called an emergency session to discuss the future of human-Cation relations. And given recent events, I believe your presence will be crucial. Eugene nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders once more. As he prepared to face this new challenge, he couldn't shake the feeling that the changes he was experiencing were just the beginning of something far larger than he could have ever imagined. The emergency session with the High Council would have to wait. As Eugene stepped out of the research facility, his communicator buzzed with an urgent message. It was from Admiral Zhao, his superior at the United Earth government. Sergeant Thompson, we have a situation on the Cation colony, world of Felis Prime. Your team is needed immediately. A shuttle is waiting for you at the spaceport. Full briefing en route. Eugene's enhanced senses kicked into high gear, processing the implications of this new development. He quickly contacted Zira and Mira, instructing them to gather the team and essential supplies. Within the hour, Eugene and his team were aboard the shuttle, streaking through hyperspace towards Felis Prime. As they traveled, Admiral Zhao's holographic image flickered to life in the shuttle's main cabin. The situation on Felis Prime is critical, Zhao explained, his face grim. A malfunction in their planetary pheromone suppressant system has caused widespread chaos. The colonial governor, Stormclaw, has requested our immediate assistance. Eugene absorbed the information, his mind already formulating strategies. What about the local authorities? Are they not equipped to handle this? Zhao shook his head. The intensity of the pheromones has overwhelmed their usual containment measures. Your team's unique experience and adaptations make you the best suited for this mission. As the Admiral continued his briefing, Eugene felt a strange tingling sensation throughout his body. He realized his physiology was already beginning to adapt to the challenge ahead, a testament to the ongoing changes Dr. Miara had observed. The shuttle dropped out of hyperspace, and Felis Prime loomed before them. Even from orbit, Eugene could sense the turmoil on the planet's surface. His enhanced vision picked up scenes of chaos in the colony's main settlement. As they entered the atmosphere, the full extent of the crisis became apparent. The streets were filled with frenzied Cation females, their normal composure shattered by the uncontrolled mating urges. Colonial security forces struggled to maintain order, their efforts hampered by their own susceptibility to the pheromones. The shuttle touched down at the spaceport, where a harried-looking Cation male awaited them. His fur was dripping with stress, his tail lashing back and forth. "Sergeant Thompson, I'm Governor Stormclaw," he said, his voice strained. "Thank the stars you're here. The situation is deteriorating rapidly." Eugene nodded, his senses already processing the pheromone-laden air. To his surprise, he found he could filter out much of its effect, allowing him to think clearly despite the intense atmosphere. "Governor, we'll need to act fast," Eugene said, his voice taking on that strange, resonant quality that seemed to calm the agitated Cations nearby. "I propose we split into 3 teams, one to repair the suppressant system, another to provide immediate relief, and a third to secure key facilities." Stormclaw's ears perked up, hope glimmering in his eyes. "Yes, that sounds like a solid plan. I can provide you with maps and access codes for the suppressant control center." Eugene turned to his team, assigning roles based on their strengths and the newly developed abilities he had observed in each of them. He would lead the relief team, with Zira and Mira at his side. As they moved into the colony, Eugene's enhanced senses allowed him to navigate the chaos with uncanny precision. He identified the Cations most in need of assistance, directing his team with a series of quick hand signals and subvocal commands. Eugene approached a group of distressed Cation females, their fur standing on end and eyes wild with uncontrolled urges. He focused, drawing on the techniques he had developed back on Kate, but amplified by his evolving physiology. A low, soothing purr emanated from his throat, cutting through the cacophony of the street. The Cation's ears swiveled towards him, their frenzied movements slowing. Eugene placed his hands on the shoulders of the nearest female, channeling a calming energy that seemed to flow from his very being. To his amazement, the effect was almost instantaneous. The Caitian's breathing steadied, her pupils contracting from their dilated state. She looked up at Eugene, confusion and gratitude warring in her expression. "Thank you," she breathed, her voice hoarse. I don't understand what's happening to us." Eugene nodded sympathetically. "We're here to help. Please, gather anyone else who needs assistance and bring them to the Central Plaza. We're setting up a relief station there." As he worked, Eugene noticed Zira and Mira moving through the crowd with increasing confidence. Zira's diplomatic skills were being put to the test as she mediated between the human team and the agitated Caitian population. Mira, drawing on her own experiences, was particularly effective in reaching out to the younger Caitians. Eugene's communicator crackled to life. It was Dr. Miara who had set up a mobile command center to coordinate the operation. "Sergeant, I'm picking up some anomalous readings," she reported, her voice tight with concern. "The pheromone levels in some areas are far higher than they should be, even with the suppressant system offline. I suspect there may be more at play here than a simple malfunction." Eugene's mind raced, processing this new information. "Understood, Doctor. Keep monitoring the situation. I'll have the team investigating the suppressant system look into any signs of tampering or sabotage." As he signed off, Eugene caught sight of a group of young Caitian males, watching his team's efforts with a mix of awe and suspicion. He approached them, his movements deliberately slow and non-threatening. "We could use some help," he said, his voice carrying that strange, compelling resonance. "Your people need you." The Caitians exchanged glances, their tails twitching uncertainly. Then slowly, one stepped forward. "What can we do?" he asked. Eugene felt a surge of hope. This collaboration could be the key to not just resolving the immediate crisis, but to building lasting trust between humans and Caitians. As he began explaining their plan, Eugene's enhanced hearing picked up a conversation from a nearby alleyway. His blood ran cold as he caught snippets of a discussion about sabotage, experiments, and a name he didn't recognize, Shadowclaw. The crisis on Felis Prime, it seemed, was far more complex than they had initially believed. Eugene steeled himself for the challenges ahead, knowing that the next few hours would test not just his new abilities, but the very foundations of human-Caitian relations. Eugene's mind raced, processing the implications of this new threat while simultaneously coordinating the relief efforts. As the crisis on Felis Prime subsided, Eugene found himself thrust into a whirlwind of interstellar diplomacy. The United Earth government, recognizing his unique abilities and the success of his missions, approached him with an unprecedented offer. "Sergeant Thompson," Admiral Zhao said, his holographic image flickering in Eugene's quarters, "we want you to lead a new human diplomatic corps. Your experiences with the Caitians have opened doors we never thought possible." Eugene considered the proposal, his enhanced senses picking up subtle shifts in the Admiral's tone and body language. "This is a significant step, sir. What exactly would this role entail?" "You'd be shaping interspecies relations on a galactic scale," Zhao explained. "We're establishing a headquarters on a neutral space station, strategically positioned between Earth and Kate. It'll be a hub for diplomats, scientists, and volunteers from various species seeking human assistance." The potential of such a position was not lost on Eugene. He thought of Zira and Mira, of the progress they'd made on Kate, and of the countless other species that might benefit from human intervention. "I accept," Eugene said, his voice carrying that strange, resonant quality that had become his trademark. Within weeks, Eugene found himself aboard the newly christened Harmony Station. The space station buzzed with activity as representatives from dozens of species converged, seeking human aid for various crises. Eugene's team worked tirelessly, prioritizing missions based on urgency and potential impact. They developed a rigorous training program to prepare more humans for interspecies diplomatic work, focusing on physiological adaptation techniques and cultural sensitivity. As word spread of the humans' unique abilities, requests for aid flooded in from across the galaxy. Eugene found himself at the center of a rapidly expanding network of interstellar cooperation. During a rare moment of respite, Eugene received a call from Zira. Her image appeared on the interface, her face sleek and her posture confident. "Eugene," she said, her eyes bright with excitement, "I've been appointed to the Cation High Council. The long-term effects of our work are becoming more apparent. A significant portion of our population is showing reduced mating season intensity. It's leading to increased productivity and social stability." Eugene nodded, processing this information. "That's remarkable progress, Zira, but I sense there's more to it." Zira's tail twitched slightly. "You're right. This change is triggering a cultural shift. Some Cations are embracing a more human-like approach to relationships, while others cling to our traditional ways. I'm proposing a plan to establish permanent human enclaves on Cation worlds. I believe continuous interaction is necessary to maintain these beneficial effects on our society." As Eugene contemplated the implications of Zira's proposal, another call came through. It was Mira, her youthful energy palpable even through the view screen. "Eugene, I've been traveling between Cation colonies, sharing our story and encouraging young Cations to embrace interspecies cooperation. You wouldn't believe the response we're getting. It's creating quite a generational divide in our society." Eugene felt a surge of pride mixed with concern. The changes they had set in motion were far-reaching, and he couldn't help but wonder about the unforeseen consequences. His musings were interrupted by an urgent alert. A new crisis had emerged on a distant planet inhabited by a species called the Vorax. The insectoid beings were experiencing a population collapse due to a mutation affecting their queen's fertility. "They're requesting our assistance," Admiral Zhao informed Eugene. "They believe our techniques might be adapted to their situation." Eugene gathered his team, including a contingent of Cation advisors led by Zira and Mira. As they prepared for the mission, Eugene noticed a strange sensation. His mind seemed to expand, absorbing and processing alien languages with startling ease. As their ship approached the Vorax homeworld, Eugene briefed his team. "Remember, we're dealing with a completely different biological and social structure here. We need to be cautious and respectful of their customs." The Vorax delegation that greeted them was a sight to behold. Towering insectoid forms moved with an eerie grace, their compound eyes reflecting the light of their world's twin suns. As Eugene stepped forward to make introductions, he found himself instinctively communicating in the Vorax language, his words accompanied by subtle pheromone releases that conveyed complex meanings. The lead Vorax, being introduced as Hive Speaker Click-Tack, clicked its mandibles in surprise. "You speak as one of us, yet you are not. How is this possible?" Eugene, equally startled by his newfound ability, composed himself quickly. "We are here to help, Hive Speaker. Please tell us more about the situation with your queen." As Click-Tack began to explain, Eugene sensed a growing unrest among the worker caste Vorax present at the meeting. Their antennae twitched with barely suppressed agitation, and Eugene could detect faint pheromone signals of dissent. The complexity of the Vorax biology and social structure became increasingly apparent as Eugene and his team delved deeper into their investigation. The rigid caste system, enforced by complex biochemical signals, resisted their attempts at intervention. As they worked tirelessly to understand and assist the Vorax, tensions within the alien society began to rise. The worker caste, inspired by the humans' egalitarian approach, began to question the absolute authority of the ruling caste. Eugene found himself caught in a delicate balance, trying to address the Vorax's biological crisis while navigating the treacherous waters of their social upheaval. He knew that one wrong move could destabilize the entire Vorax civilization. As if the situation wasn't complex enough, Eugene's enhanced senses detected a familiar scent on the wind. His eyes narrowed as he scanned the horizon, spotting a group of new arrivals. "Razor Claw," he murmured, recognizing the leader of the conservative Cation faction. The appearance of this old adversary added a new layer of complication to an already volatile situation. Eugene turned to Zira and Mira, his voice low and urgent. "We've got company. Razor Claw and his followers have just arrived. Whatever they're planning, it can't be good for our mission here." As Eugene watched Razor Claw's group approach, he knew that the true challenge was only beginning. The fate of the Vorax, the future of human-Cation relations, and perhaps the stability of the entire sector now hung in the balance. Balance. Eugene's mind raced, analyzing the complex web of tensions that now threatened to unravel before him. "Zira, Mira," he said, his voice low and urgent. "We need to intercept Razorclaw before he reaches the Vorax leadership. His presence here could destabilize everything we've worked for." As they moved to confront the approaching Cation group, Eugene's communicator buzzed. Admiral Zhao's holographic image appeared, his expression grave. "Sergeant Thompson, we've received intelligence about a potential first contact situation at the edge of explored space. It's critical that we send a team immediately." Eugene's enhanced senses picked up the subtle undertones of urgency in the Admiral's voice. He glanced at the Vorax delegation, then back at Razorclaw's approaching group. The weight of the decision pressed upon him. "Admiral, with all due respect, I need to remain here. The situation with the Vorax is at a critical juncture, and Razorclaw's arrival complicates matters further." Eugene's mind worked rapidly, formulating a plan. "I'll dispatch Lieutenant Chen to lead the first contact mission. She's more than capable, and I've trained her extensively in our diplomatic protocols." Admiral Zhao nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. "Very well, Sergeant. I trust your judgment. Keep us informed of any developments." As the hologram flickered out, Eugene turned to his team. "Dr. Miara, I need you to continue working on the Queen's fertility issue. Zira, Mira, you're with me. We need to contain Razorclaw's influence before it spreads." They moved swiftly through the alien landscape, the twin suns of the Vorax world casting long shadows across the chitinous structures. As they approached Razorclaw's group, Eugene could sense the tension radiating from the conservative Cations. "Razorclaw," Eugene called out, his voice carrying that strange, compelling resonance. "This is not your fight. Your presence here endangers the delicate balance we're trying to maintain." The Cation leader's eyes narrowed, his tail lashing with nearly unleashed aggression. "You overstep your bounds, human. The Vorax situation affects us all. We have every right to be here." Before Eugene could respond, a commotion erupted from the nearby Vorax settlement. The air filled with a cacophony of clicks and whistles, the insectoid being's method of communication. Eugene's enhanced senses parsed the sounds, translating them into coherent information. "The worker caste," he breathed, realization dawning. "They're staging a strike." The scene before them dissolved into chaos. Swarms of worker Vorax poured out of their hives, their usually orderly movements now frenzied and purposeful. Security drones deployed by the ruling caste buzzed overhead, emitting warning signals. Eugene watched in horror as the situation escalated rapidly. The workers, emboldened by human ideals of equality, were demanding representation and better treatment. The ruling caste, threatened by this unprecedented revolt, responded with force. Razorclaw seized the opportunity, approaching the Vorax leadership with an offer. "We can provide you with advanced Cation technology to quell this rebellion," he said, his voice smooth and persuasive. "In exchange, we ask for certain considerations." Eugene realized the magnitude of the crisis unfolding before him. If Razorclaw succeeded in arming the ruling caste, it could lead to a massacre. The entire mission, the future of human Vorax relations, and countless lives hung in the balance. Drawing on his enhanced abilities, Eugene's mind raced through potential solutions. He needed to act fast, to find a way to bridge the gap between the castes while neutralizing Razorclaw's influence. "Listen to me," Eugene called out, his voice cutting through the chaos. Vorax of all castes turned to him, their compound eyes reflecting the urgency of the moment. "There's a way forward that doesn't require bloodshed, a way that can preserve your traditions while allowing for growth and change." As he spoke, Eugene began to outline a daring plan, a restructuring of Vorax society that would maintain the caste system but introduce elements of mobility and representation. To demonstrate its effectiveness, he proposed a temporary ruling council with representatives from all castes, offering himself as a neutral mediator. The proposal met immediate resistance. The ruling caste chittered in disapproval, while Razorclaw's faction voiced their opposition loudly. But amidst the discord, Eugene noticed a group of Vorax listening intently, their antennae twitching with interest. A young female Vorax stepped forward, her exoskeleton shimmering with an iridescent quality that marked her as a potential future leader. I am Zixala, she announced, her mandibles clicking rhythmically. And I believe this human's proposal has merit. We cannot continue as we have, yet we need not abandon all that defines us. Eugene felt a glimmer of hope as more Vorax began to gather around Zixala, signaling their support. He knew that the path ahead would be challenging, fraught with political maneuvering and the ever-present threat of violence. But in this moment, as he stood on the precipice of change on an alien world, Eugene Thompson felt the weight of his responsibility and the potential for a new era of interspecies cooperation. As negotiations began in earnest, Eugene couldn't help but wonder about the first contact mission he had dispatched. Little did he know that the events unfolding at the edge of explored space would soon intertwine with his efforts on the Vorax homeworld, setting the stage for a galactic drama that would test the limits of human diplomacy and ingenuity. Eugene's attention was suddenly drawn away from the unfolding crisis on the Vorax homeworld by an urgent transmission from Admiral Zhao. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing the Admiral's grim expression. Sergeant Thompson, we have a critical situation developing. The Ethereals have made contact, and their arrival is imminent. We need you to return to the neutral space station immediately. Eugene's enhanced senses picked up on the subtle undertones of fear in the Admiral's voice. He glanced at Zira and Mira, who had overheard the transmission. Understood, Admiral. We'll depart at once, Eugene replied, his mind already racing with the implications of this new development. As they boarded their ship, Eugene briefed his team on the situation. The Vorax crisis would have to be managed remotely for now. The fate of multiple civilizations hung in the balance. Upon arriving at the neutral space station, Eugene was struck by the frenetic energy permeating the air. Diplomats and military advisors from various worlds hurried through the corridors, their faces etched with concern. Eugene convened an emergency meeting of the newly formed Galactic Council. Representatives from Earth, Kate, Vorax, and other allied species gathered in the main conference room. The diversity of life forms present was staggering, yet Eugene found himself seamlessly understanding and communicating with each species. As the meeting progressed, Eugene's enhanced abilities came to the forefront. He mediated between the diverse council members with ease, bridging cultural and linguistic gaps that would have once seemed insurmountable. We must present a unified front, Eugene addressed the council, his voice resonating with a strange new authority. The Ethereal's approach poses a threat to all our civilizations. Our strength lies in our unity. Zira, now a high-ranking Cation diplomat, stood beside Eugene, her presence both a comfort and a source of tension. Their eyes met briefly, unspoken emotions passing between them. As the council debated strategy, Eugene noticed Mira organizing a group of young aliens from various species. Her enthusiasm was infectious, and soon the station was abuzz with demonstrations of solidarity. Amidst the preparations, Eugene received a startling report from a Vorax science team led by Zixala. They had made a breakthrough in analyzing the Ethereal's technology. Their energy manipulation interferes with neural patterns, Zixala explained, her mandibles clicking rapidly. It could explain their warnings about human expansion. This revelation sent shockwaves through the council. Eugene's mind raced, processing the implications. He turned to the assembled representatives, his voice calm but urgent. We need to develop a neural shielding technology, he proposed, a joint project combining human, Cation, and Vorax science. It's our best defense against potential ethereal influence. The proposal was met with a mix of excitement and apprehension. As research teams from multiple worlds began working on the project, Eugene found himself at the center of a whirlwind of activity. Late one night, as Eugene pored over reports in his private quarters, there was a soft knock at the door. It was Zira. You look like you could use a break, she said, her feline eyes glinting in the low light. Their professional collaboration had reignited something between them. As they talked, the mounting stress of the situation seemed to melt away. Their conversation led to a moment of intimacy, a stolen respite from the chaos around them. The next day, as Eugene supervised the neural shielding project, alarms blared throughout the station. A group of extremists had infiltrated the research lab, intent on sabotaging the project. Eugene sprang into action, leading a team through the station's zero-gravity maintenance shafts. His enhanced reflexes and tactical skills came to the fore as they outmaneuvered the saboteurs. In the aftermath of the attack, as the Council reconvened to discuss security measures, Eugene received an unexpected message from Dr. Miara. Her latest research suggested that the physiological changes experienced by humans in prolonged contact with alien species might be more than mere adaptation. As Eugene contemplated this new information, he realized that a defensive stance wouldn't be enough. They needed to take the initiative. "We need to send a diplomatic mission to the Ethereal's home system," Eugene proposed to the Council. "I volunteer to lead a small, diverse team. We must demonstrate the strength of our cooperation." The Council erupted into heated debate. As arguments flew back and forth, Eugene stood firm, his enhanced empathy allowing him to understand and address each species' concerns. As the Council deliberated, Eugene found himself standing at a crossroads. The fate of multiple civilizations rested on his shoulders, and the true nature of humanity's place in the cosmos hung in the balance. With Zira and Mira by his side, he prepared to face the greatest challenge of his extraordinary career. The weight of his decision pressed upon him, but he knew it was the right course of action. "I accept your decision, Sergeant Thompson," Admiral Zhao said, his holographic form flickering slightly. "Assemble your team and prepare for immediate departure." Eugene nodded, his enhanced mind already formulating plans. He turned to Zira and Mira, who stood at attention nearby. "We're going to need a diverse team for this mission. Zira, contact the Cation High Council and request their top diplomat. Mira, reach out to Zigzala on Vorax. Her insights will be invaluable." As his companions rushed to carry out his orders, Eugene contacted Dr. Miara. "Doctor, I need you on this mission. Your expertise in xenobiology could be crucial." Within hours, a sleek, newly designed vessel stood ready in the station's docking bay. Its hull gleamed with an iridescent sheen, a result of the integrated neural shielding technology. Eugene led his team aboard, a mix of anticipation and tension palpable in the air. As they cleared the station's perimeter, the ship's sensors began to detect unusual energy patterns. Eugene leaned forward in his command chair, studying the readouts. "Spatial distortions ahead," he announced. "Mira, plot a course through the safest route." Mira's fingers danced across the navigation console, her brow furrowed in concentration. The ship lurched and weaved through the invisible maze of distortions, each maneuver precisely calculated. As they entered ethereal space, a fleet of crystalline ships surrounded them. The vessels shimmered and pulsed with internal light, their very existence seeming to defy conventional physics. "We're being hailed," Zira reported, her feline ears twitching. Eugene nodded. "Open a channel." A series of light pulses and electromagnetic waves flooded their communication systems. Eugene's enhanced mind struggled to interpret the complex language, causing a sharp pain behind his eyes. He gritted his teeth, focusing on the message. "They're escorting us to their central station," he managed to convey to his team. The ethereal space station loomed before them, a massive structure of interconnected crystalline formations. As they docked, Eugene felt a sense of awe mixed with trepidation. The team disembarked, following a path of pulsating light that guided them through twisting corridors. They arrived at a vast chamber, its walls shifting and reforming continuously. Before them, the ethereal leadership manifested as swirling vortexes of energy. Eugene stepped forward, his enhanced abilities straining to facilitate communication. "Greetings," he began, his voice steady despite the discomfort. "We come in peace, seeking understanding and cooperation." The Ethereals responded with a burst of light and energy that Eugene interpreted as a mix of curiosity and concern. They expressed their worries about human expansion, viewing it as a potential destabilizing force in the galaxy. Eugene listened intently, formulating a response. "We propose a compromise," he said, outlining a plan to limit human expansion to specific sectors in exchange for ethereal knowledge and technology. The Ethereals countered with their own demand. Humans must undergo a process they called ascension, altering their physiology to be more compatible with ethereal energy patterns. As discussions continued, Dr. Miara approached Eugene, her eyes wide with excitement. "Eugene, I've made a breakthrough," she whispered. the changes you and other humans have experienced. It's not random mutation. It's a natural evolution triggered by exposure to diverse species. Eugene's mind raced with the implications of this discovery. He turned back to the Ethereals, ready to share this new information, when suddenly alarms blared throughout the station. A rogue faction of Ethereals, opposed to any alliance with lesser species, had launched an attack. Energy weapons lashed out, threatening to overwhelm the neural shielding of Eugene's team. In that moment of crisis, Eugene felt something shift within him. He raised his hands instinctively, and to his amazement, the energy fields around him began to bend to his will. He created a protective barrier around his team, deflecting the attackers' weapons. The Ethereal leadership, witnessing this display of power, intervened to stop the attack. As the chaos subsided, they approached Eugene with a new proposition. Instead of limiting human expansion, they would work alongside humans and their allies to establish a new galactic order based on mutual understanding and cooperation. As Eugene and his team prepared to depart with this historic agreement, he felt a wave of exhaustion wash over him. His newfound abilities had taken a toll on his body. As they boarded their ship, Eugene's vision blurred, and he collapsed to the floor. The last thing he heard was Dr. Miara's voice, urgent and filled with concern. "We need to get him back home, now. His evolution, it's accelerating beyond anything we've seen before." As the ship raced back towards Allied space, Eugene drifted in and out of consciousness, his mind filled with visions of a new galactic future, one that now rested on his survival and the successful implementation of the agreement with the Ethereals. Ethereals. As consciousness slipped away, Eugene's last thoughts were of the monumental task that lay ahead. The ship's engines hummed as they pushed through space, racing against time to save Eugene's life. Dr. Miara worked tirelessly, monitoring his vital signs and administering treatments to stabilize his rapidly changing physiology. Zira paced the ship's corridors, her tail twitching with worry. Mira sat quietly in the cockpit, her young face etched with concern as she piloted the vessel with unwavering focus. As they approached the Allied space station, Eugene's condition began to stabilize. His breathing evened out, and the violent tremors that had racked his body subsided. Dr. Miara breathed a sigh of relief, her shoulders sagging with exhaustion. "We're not out of the woods yet," she cautioned the others, "but I think he's going to make it." The ship docked with a gentle thud, and a flurry of activity erupted as medical teams rushed to assist. Eugene was quickly transferred to a hover stretcher, his still form a stark contrast to the bustle around him. As they moved through the station's corridors, word of their arrival spread rapidly. Delegates from Earth, Kate, Vorax, and other allied species gathered, their faces a mix of anticipation and concern. To everyone's surprise, Eugene's eyes fluttered open as they approached the main assembly hall. He raised a hand, halting the medical team's progress. "I need to address them," he said, his voice weak but determined. "Help me up." Dr. Miara started to protest, but the look in Eugene's eyes silenced her objections. With Zira and Mira's assistance, Eugene rose to his feet, swaying slightly but standing tall. As he entered the assembly hall, a hush fell over the gathered delegates. Eugene made his way to the central podium, each step measured and deliberate. When he reached the microphone, he paused, taking a deep breath before speaking. "Esteemed delegates," he began, his voice gaining strength with each word, "I come before you today with news that will shape the future of our galaxy." As Eugene spoke, recounting the successful negotiations with the Ethereals and the dawn of a new era of cooperation, something extraordinary began to happen. A soft, shimmering aura emanated from his body, growing in intensity as he continued his address. The assembled delegates watched in awe as the energy seemed to reach out, touching each of them in turn. Caitians felt their fur stand on end, while Vorax delegates' exoskeletons vibrated with a pleasant resonance. Human representatives experienced a warmth spreading through their bodies, and even the most stoic of alien diplomats found themselves moved by an inexplicable sense of unity. Eugene's voice rose, filled with passion and hope. "Today we stand on the threshold of a new chapter in galactic history. Together, we will forge a future of understanding, cooperation, and shared prosperity for all sentient beings." As he concluded his speech, the shimmering aura reached its peak intensity. For a brief moment, it seemed as if every being in the room could understand one another perfectly, transcending the barriers of language and biology. Then, as suddenly as it had appeared, the aura faded. Eugene swayed on his feet, his eyes rolling back as exhaustion overtook him. Zira and Mira rushed forward, catching him before he could fall. "Get him to the medical bay, now!" Dr. Mayara shouted, her voice cutting through the stunned silence that had fallen over the assembly hall. As Eugene was rushed out of the room, the gathered delegates erupted into a cacophony of excited chatter. The implications of what they had just witnessed were staggering, and the promise of a new galactic order hung in the air like an electric charge. In the medical bay, Dr. Mayara and her team worked furiously to stabilize Eugene's condition. Monitors beeped and whirred, tracking the rapid changes occurring within his body. "His DNA is rewriting itself," Dr. Mayara explained to Zira and Mira, who refused to leave Eugene's side. "It's incorporating elements from various alien physiologies, but somehow it's maintaining his essential human nature." Over the next 3 days, Eugene's body underwent a dramatic metamorphosis. His skin took on a subtle, iridescent quality, and his closed eyes seemed to dance with movement beneath the lids. Zira and Mira maintained their vigil, their presence appearing to have a calming effect on Eugene's volatile condition. On the morning of the 4th day, Eugene's eyes snapped open. He sat up with a gasp, his gaze darting around the room before settling on Zira and Mira. I can understand you," he said, his voice filled with wonder. "Not just your words, but everything, your thoughts, your feelings, your very essence." Dr. Mayara approached cautiously, her medical scanner humming as she passed it over Eugene's body. "Incredible," she murmured. "Your neural pathways have completely reconfigured. It's as if you've become a living, universal translator." As news of Eugene's recovery spread, the station buzzed with activity. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session to discuss the implementation of the agreement with the Ethereals and the establishment of a new interstellar governance structure. Eugene, still adapting to his newfound abilities, found himself at the center of these discussions. His unique perspective and ability to bridge the gaps between species made him an invaluable mediator. During one particularly heated debate, Eugene raised his hand, silencing the room. "We need a specialized diplomatic corps," he proposed, "one trained to foster understanding and cooperation across all species. We can use the techniques we developed during the vacation mating season crisis, combined with what we've learned about human adaptability." The proposal was met with enthusiastic approval, and plans were quickly set in motion to establish this new corps. As the framework for the United Galactic Alliance took shape, Eugene found himself navigating not only the complexities of interstellar politics but also his evolving personal relationships. His bond with Zira deepened, transcending their initial physical attraction. They found themselves able to communicate on a level that went beyond words, their thoughts and emotions intertwining in a dance of mutual understanding. Simultaneously, Eugene's relationship with Mira evolved as she stepped into a leadership role among the younger generation of diplomats. He became both mentor and confidant, guiding her as she navigated the challenges of her new position. As preparations for the official formation of the United Galactic Alliance neared completion, Eugene stood on the observation deck of the space station, gazing out at the stars. Zira and Mira joined him, one on each side, their presence a comforting reminder of the journey that had brought them to this moment. "It's hard to believe how far we've come," Mira said softly, her eyes reflecting the starlight. Zira purred in agreement, her tail brushing against Eugene's leg. "And yet, I feel this is just the beginning." Eugene nodded, taking each of their hands in his. The touch sent a ripple of understanding between them, a silent acknowledgement of the challenges and adventures that lay ahead. As they stood there, united in their diversity, Eugene felt a sense of anticipation building. The galaxy was changing, and they were at the forefront of that change. Whatever the future held, he knew that together they were ready to face it. The stars seemed to shine a little brighter as they looked out into the vast expanse of space, the promise of a new era stretching out before them like an endless cosmic ocean.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.